A mine could destroy an ancient Indigenous site. This time in New South Wales near Gunnedah. It's opposed by the local Gomeroi people. What do you make of the fact that this is another prospect? Is this just the price of progress?
Oh, well, Tom, I think resource companies need to continue to have honest and open discussions with Indigenous communities. But some of these propositions, particularly from the opposition, from the Labor Party, that we should shut the resources sector down while people look at this issue more closely, I think are fraught with danger. It's the biggest part of our economy, employs nearly 250,000 Australians directly, and is one of the most highly regulated industries in the world.
Well, you say that when we look at the previous example, this 46,000 old, or it's been continuously inhabited for 46,000 years, this site in WA, all the information come out since that Rio Tinto knew about the site, knew of the significance and still went ahead with it. I mean, that's history the country and the Indigenous Australians are never getting back. Is there any regret about that?
Well, I'd certainly refer you to Rio's statements where they've apologised. But once again, I mean, these are things which are legislated through state governments in terms of their permits and decision-making process. The bottom line here, Tom, is we all have to do better in terms of engagement with Indigenous communities. But once again, you don't go mining with a teaspoon. These are big, heavy industrial sites that take years to develop. These permits in particular are developed over a number of years in consultation with local communities. And if we haven't got that engagement right, well, we all need to do better.
When you say Rio Tinto was sorry as well, it's been revealed from what's happened within the company. And they're not sorry for what actually happened. They're sorry it caused distress. What do you make of that as an apology?
Mate, I'm the Federal Minister for Resources. It's not my job to determine how good an apology may or may not be. My job is to stay focused on the people of Australia and their needs at the moment are around jobs. This is why we've put up the JobMaker program. It's why we've all worked so hard to ensure the resources sector maintained its operations right through the coronavirus period and out the other side. So that's what I'm focused on, Tom, and I'll continue to be focused on it.
But you must have a view on whether we've got this balance right. I mean, this is, again, history we'll never get back. These are sites that are sacred to communities. Don't we need to have a very careful look at this? And I know you say, you know, this is a state jurisdiction, but you're still the federal minister. You've got to have a view on whether what we're seeing happen at the moment is the right move for the country or not.
Well, as I've said, mining is not done with teaspoons. They're not out there playing tiddlywinks. It takes a long time to develop these projects, a long time to develop the mines themselves, a long time to get all the people in place. And never forget, there are great benefits for Indigenous communities through the resources sector. They provide wonderful employment opportunities. They support their local Indigenous communities. In fact, through the corona pandemic, it was resource companies in particular that ensured that there were still people on the ground, that resources could be brought in where necessary in remote communities, that they are integral to what the industry does. They continue to work with Indigenous communities. But as I've said, we continue to have that need and desire for honest and open communications.
But when we look at the example that's happened, for example, on this site in WA, the 46,000 continuously inhabited cave shelter, are you saying on balance, the jobs that it brings and so on, it was a good thing, not just for the country, but for Indigenous people?
Well, on balance decisions are ones which are made every single day, whether it's on balance with environmental issues, whether it's on balance with the Indigenous community and their challenges and their concerns, whether it's on balance with location and development. These are decisions that governments make, whether they are local, state or federal,
but do you agree
every single day and every week. Well, as I've said, I'm not the decision maker. The decision maker and the permits were issued by the WA government. As I've said, we need to have honest and open communications. Tom, it's not a decision for me. My view is very straightforward. We all need to do better in terms of our Indigenous engagement.
But I'm not asking about a decision because it's already done. It's happened. I'm just saying if this type of decision is the right one for the country, this is an example of the balance being right between Indigenous history and progress, mining, jobs and so on.
Well, the decision is one of balance. It's regrettable that this has happened. the company has made a statement. However, they worked through the permit process. They've jumped each of the hurdles that were put in place. They've worked with the Indigenous community. Now, that is very clearly broken down at some point in the engagement. We do need to do better. We do need to continue to have honest and open conversations with Indigenous communities. But once again, on-balance decisions are made every single day.
But just when you say regrettable there, so you're saying if all the information was at hand at the time, then perhaps this decision wouldn't have been made?
Tom, I don't have a time machine. I can't go back and make a change on something which has already happened. What I'm focused on is how we improve our engagement with Indigenous communities. I'm working very closely with Ken White and, of course, with Susan Lee in terms of the EPBC Act and how it applies. But once again, these are decisions which are made on balance every day, not just around Indigenous heritage, but around environment.
Is the conversation you're having with Ken White right now and Susan Lee about perhaps making sure these types of sites can be better protected, is that part of the conversation that's happening at the moment?
I have a range of conversations with my colleagues, Tom, not just on that particular issue, but on jobs and how we ensure those jobs are provided into Indigenous communities. I mean, if we look at Adani, something which, there were lots of people around Australia who decided they didn't want that particular project. Media reports are that more than 20% of the workforce are from the Indigenous community. That is a great outcome for them. This means permanent and full-time jobs, and that's one of the best things I can do for any Australian.
Paradise Dam, just to finish on this topic, I know that this is something close to your heart. You weren't agreeing with the lowering of it, so the reduced capacity, farmers concerned about lack of water going forward. But the state government and the dam operator have said they've got permission from the federal government to lower that dam wall. So what's happening here? How is that permission given?
Oh, that's just complete nonsense. What they asked for was a change in their environmental conditions. There is only one in regards to lungfish. It's got nothing to do with the decision about whether a wall is knocked down or not. They're quite simply playing games. The Palaszczuk government, I mean, I thought when the Jackie Trad roadblock disappeared from the leadership of the ALP in Queensland, we'd sort of start to sort these things out, Tom. But they are knocking down the dam wall at Paradise. It will reduce its capacity by more than 30%. I don't see any plan to replace it. So what we know is that the Queensland Palaszczuk government is not supportive of our local farmers. It's not supportive of economic growth and development, but they're knocking down existing facilities. Now, I just think that this is the decision's wrong. I've read the reviews, I've read the reports. More testing was needed, and it should have been done.
So just on this permission, though, there was no permission given, whether it be at ministerial or departmental level, for this lowering?
Well, there is one environmental condition associated with the dam in regards to lungfish, which Minister Lee is the shareholding minister for. It's not a decision about whether a wall is knocked over or not, or whether a wall is stable in terms of the dam. I mean, what's happened here, Tom, is Queensland Labor has built a dam to a price, not to a standard, and that is to the detriment of us all.
That was back in 2005, and when you say we need to look into this further, at the end of that further surveying process or whatever happens, it might still be the case. They say it's not safe. That's what this is based on. If that's the case, then they will have to lower the wall, presumably.
Well, they're doing it now, Tom. The excavators are on top of the wall right now, knocking it down.
But even if there was that further report, as you're pushing for, that doesn't necessarily get a different outcome, does it?
Oh, well, that's correct, but you get the right outcome and the right decision. The decision at the moment is to spend more than $100 million, taking 30% of the capacity out of one of our largest dams in Queensland on the basis of reports which their own engineers have said are questionable.